So the film I have chosen is the 2014 black comedy anthology film entitled Wild Tales, or as it is known in Argentina, and correct me on my pronunciation, please, Relatos Salvajes. Is that it?
Relatos Salvajes, which
Rel-
is more like Savage Tales, I suppose, which I think would be a bit...
Relatos Salvajes.
Sure.
Okay, sure. That's as close as I'm getting. Okay, so directed by Damián Szifron and starring Ricardo Darin, Oscar Martinez, and Erica Riva. The film is composed of 6 short films. These shorts are Pasternak, The Rats, The Strongest, Little Bomb, The Proposal, and Till Death Do Us Part, and are unified by common themes of betrayal and vengeance. So this is the second time I've seen Wild Tales, and I loved it. I loved it as much as I did during my first viewing. I think the performances and the filmmaking grab your attention and don't let go until the credits roll. The film switches expertly between tension, shock, and hilarity. According to the director, Wild Tales is about the fuzzy boundary that separates civilization from barbarism and the undeniable pleasure of losing control. So I liked it. Bina didn't. What did you guys think?
I love the sort of the short film format. I know it's not for everyone. I've always loved short stories and short films, and I think there is sort of a unique skill in being able to tell a story in a very short period of time. And so with that, it was very much my type of film. And I think while the English translation is Wild Tales, I think the translation of Savage Tales is probably more appropriate for this particular film. Yeah, no, I loved all the different stories. They were all comedic in their own way, and it very much had that sort of sense of, oh, I'm really annoyed, I'm really angry. Let me sort of go through a cathartic exercise of envisioning what I would do if there were no consequences in the world. Feel to it, which I really enjoyed as a bit of a bit of a concept.
I did enjoy it. I'm with Bina on not being a huge fan of these kind of anthology films. I mean, I'm happy to watch short films and stuff like that. It's just sort of this cramming a bunch of separate narratives into one film and like calling it a film when it's really a bunch of smaller films. It's a bit, I don't know. I'm not generally a fan of that. But that being said, I did really enjoy it. I just would have enjoyed it more if it was like, I don't know, a Black Mirror style TV series or something, rather than being the one film. I feel like one film should be the one narrative, but just my opinion. Yeah, I did really enjoy, like as the director said, like this sort of sense of surrendering complete control. And Pukar was saying with what we talked about after having watched it, that it's just sort of this sense of just surrendering sort of to your first, most immediate sort of primal desire to react to whatever just happened that you're annoyed about. And maybe the kind of things you would do if there was zero consequences. Like even if, I don't know, you could kill someone, but then afterwards they didn't end up dead or whatever. Like you could just do literally whatever you wanted in the moment to blow off steam. Then maybe those things would be the kind of things you do. Because who hasn't like been angry at someone who's been an idiot on the road and has been like, well, I wish that dude died or something. Like, and no one would, well, I don't know, most people wouldn't go on killing anyone, but it is maybe sort of this first instinct of, oh, right now, while I'm this angry, I think the most satisfying resolution would be if this happened to them, or if I could do this. And just sort of seeing the sort of just the characters just sort of surrendering to that and just going with it is quite, I don't know, I don't have a good word for this. Satisfying, maybe.
Yeah, I think cathartic is a really good word to use. I think that captures what I felt, like not just the wish fulfillment or the sort of living vicariously through these characters and, wishing you could do some of these things, wishing you could blow up a towing bay because you keep getting parking tickets. But I also think the way the film is constructed, like it plays with your emotions and your expectations. It makes you tense, it makes you shocked, and then it'll sort of shatter that tension with a really funny moment, or vice versa. I think, it's really expert the way it leads you through the experience. I think the film benefits, like, yeah, you could technically have these as a series of short films or a series of episodes of a television series, but I think the experience of watching them one after the other really just, I don't know, builds that sense, that just sort of repetitive sense of shock, hilarity, and release. And it's just like a really, I don't know, satisfying sensation or sensorial experience. It's hard to describe it because, like, most of the times when I watch a movie, I'm trying to think about what are the characters, what is their inner motivation, what is the theme, what is the message that the filmmaker is trying to convey. But this is really just like, it's more like a comedy, like it's more like slapstick. It's just pure enjoyment to me.
Yeah, and I think the fact that it's short helps with that. I think if any of these stories were longer, you'd sort of go into the realm of, okay, this isn't necessarily funny anymore. This is just you're just watching someone go absolutely angry and then just destroy things, and they're not sort of the funny protagonist. The fact that it happens in sort of short, quick succession sort of relives the experience of you being like very angry, quick cathartic release of, oh God, I'm so angry, this is what I do. And then you move on, right? And then it changes, and then you sort of go back to normal. And then I think what it does is sort of having these separate scenes. You sort of have the cathartic release, and then you're sort of reset to zero, and then you have a new scenario where again you're introduced with a scenario that might be commonly experienced, things like someone cheating on you, or having your car towed away, things like that, and it sort of goes through these different settings and sort of gives you that cathartic release. I really cannot see any of these stories working in any sort of longer form 50-minute episodes or films, because I think it just come off as a very different tone, just wouldn't be comedy in the same sense. And I think the only one that sort of felt like it didn't quite fit with the others, and let me know what you all think, is the one where the teenager who came home after a hit and run.
Yeah.
That one felt like it didn't fit in with any of the others, because that one just didn't feel like a common experience, maybe, or maybe it is, because so the last one was about being cheated on and that sort of betrayal. There was one about road rage and having to deal with annoying drivers on the road. There was one about someone who's wronged you in your life, right? The one about the loan shark. Again, most of those things are relatable. The one about the son who did a hit and run and then having to sort that out. That one I didn't quite understand how it fit in with everything else, but maybe I'm missing something there.
Yeah, I agree. That doesn't quite fit into the relatability of the other stories, but also the theme of vengeance, because it's not about a character seeking revenge. It's about a character trying to solve a problem. But it probably did have the biggest laugh of any of the shorts for me when they're negotiating who gets what in the deal. And one of them says, "Wait, who's getting $1 million?" And I just cracked up. And he's like, "No, forget it. It's just easier to send my son to jail. Forget it."
Yeah. I mean, I guess like, especially having now discussed this in context with the other two films, I suppose all these shorts and the other two films we've discussed are all sort of about characters not getting what they perceive to be justice and creating their own justice out of it. And I suppose even the one with the bargain, or whatever it's called, la propuesta, the one with the hit and run, is still at the end of the day that, like, the it's all about the dad trying to get a result that he believes to be just, because surely, even though the boy did do a hit and run and it is his fault, surely from the dad's perspective that it's not sort of just for him to have his son taken away for like a stupid teenage mistake or something. So from the dad's perspective, he's probably still trying to get some sort of justice, if you will, for his family, even though I imagine most of us wouldn't agree with that definition. While at the same time also wanting to sort of have what to him is a fair deal. Like, at the same time, he doesn't want to be ripped off in some sort of unjust bargain. So I guess from that perspective, it fits in sort of with the overall theme of today's podcast episode, and with the other shorts and Wild Tales. And And I guess maybe the relatable aspect is to sort of just try and generate your own sense of justice in a situation where your definition of justice doesn't agree with the official definition and what most people would consider justice. And maybe that's supposed to be the relatable aspect. But I don't know. I do think it sticks out a bit.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, actually. I hadn't thought about that, but the sort of the common theme in all of these films, including all of the stories within Wild Tales, is restorative justice, right? And it's where the legal system, the penal system, doesn't fulfill the sort of the restorative justice that you expect it to do, right? Everyone is wronged in some way, and there needs to be some sort of action or something done in order to restore you back to where you were, or back to a place where you think you should be. The clearest example of that is the Bombita one, right? Because he got his car towed away wrongly, according to him, and so he was sort of put back, and then he went to the office of the car towing company, and he said, not only do I want you to refund me, but also I want you to cover the cost and time that I've spent having to fix this, and I want an apology. It's this idea of restorative justice. And it's true about sort of all of them, where for the story, The Bargain, the father and the parents didn't think it was justice for their son to go away to prison, given that all the amount of resources they've sort of put into him, right? They're like and this sort of argument comes out where they say, well, he's got such a bright future, it wouldn't be justice to send him in prison when he could add so much good to the world, or add so much potential to the world. And so he tries to create his own form of restorative justice, where he tries to get someone else to go in prison in his sake, so that justice is created.
There's definitely a cynical attitude towards society and the state, and you have to kind of take the law into your own hands. I think one interesting, or one sort of funny distinction between the films is that the first two films are dealing with this really extreme form of violation and injustice, like someone being wrongfully convicted and forced to live in prison for 10 years. Whereas I guess what's funny about Wild Tales is the injustices are so everyday and commonplace, and they're not quite enough to lose control over, but they're just enough to keep pricking at you till you can't take it anymore.
And a lot of them are also not really failure of the legal system. It's just that it's not something the legal system deals with. Like, you can't sue someone for having cheated on you, or for being the road thing maybe. But like, there's a lot of things that just aren't within the responsibility of the legal system.
Yeah.
I think you're right in the sense that Wild Tales film, it's about sort of injustice in a much smaller sense, right? Like someone, I don't know, not letting you through on the road, not letting you overtake them when you need to be somewhere. That is a minor form of injustice, if it's even that, compared to being wrongly put in prison for 10 years. But and one of the things I remember, so once when we finished watching the film, Tanja and I was sitting down saying a lot of it's very fantastical in a sense. That film is very, I just can't see people acting in that way. And so it feels a lot like fantasy, except for in The Bargain, where the pregnant woman was run over. At the end of the film, I think, I can't remember whether it's the father or the husband. The husband kills or attacks, and I think the implication is possibly kills the person who was willing to go to prison. And only in that particular scenario that I think that is a scenario where I could possibly see someone acting in that way, where they've lost their wife and their unborn child, that they could act in that way. But in all other respect, in all the other scenarios, it felt so fantastical because their response to the injustice that was suffered was so disproportionate.
The difference is that this isn't the central character, right? It's not the central character is the father who's trying to right this perceived injustice of his son having to go to jail for a minor mistake from his perspective, presumably. And the husband who commits the presumable murder at the end isn't center of that narrative. Though also that being said, I also think, I mean, that's also the most sort of realistic one to me, because I could also absolutely see a rich father doing that kind of thing for his son much more than I could see most of the other things actually happening.
I like that short because I feel like you get the initial horror of what's occurred, but then the rest of the running time is them getting further and further away from the actual crime, and it gets into this minutia of bargaining and negotiation. And then finally that's resolved and you feel like, oh, that's the end of the film, that's the conclusion. And then suddenly the husband comes in and, beats him to death with a hammer or something, and you're suddenly thrown back into the reality of what they're actually talking about. So I think it does a good job of showing like the tension between the description of an injustice and the actual lived experience of it sort of bursting back into reality.
It also sort of really ruins this fairly neatly tied up situation. Like one thing I find so horrifying about it is that like we don't even know what happens after this, because technically no one except the lawyer and the official person dude know about this deal, and they probably don't care too much about whether the gardener's family actually gets paid off or not. There's no way anyone's gonna tell the gardener's family that the gardener didn't actually do it. So he and like his wife and his children are just gonna live with the fact of him having admitted to this crime now, and they probably won't even get any money. So the original deal was they sort of lose 2 years with him or so, and get a lot of money in return. And now they just lose him forever and don't get anything in return, presumably. I mean, I would like to think that the father would still sort of give them some money out of, I don't know, guilt or kindness or whatever, but I don't feel like that's too likely. And the other two would probably be perfectly happy to split the gardener's share between the two of them. So, so like even this sort of, to some extent, neatly wrapped up, while still a bit unsatisfying, but somewhat neatly wrapped up conclusion that they reach when they strike the bargain, just that gets completely overturned at that point.
Yeah, the best laid plans. I did want to ask what you guys thought of the final film, because it's slightly different to the others in the sense that, the wedding one, in the sense that there's not it doesn't end in murder, it ends in sex. It ends in this kind of strange reconciliation between the two wronged parties. What did you think of that one?
True. Yeah, I mean, I guess it's also La Bombita is the other one where no one actually dies, right? The one with the tow truck.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, I guess it sort of fits in with sort of the same theme of everyone. I guess everyone in all of these films kind of gets a good outcome to some extent, right? Because the bride finds out she was cheated on. She gets to do her response to that, but then in the end she doesn't really lose anything, because she doesn't lose her husband because they reconcile supposedly. She doesn't, I don't know, she she gets to have this huge reaction, but then it doesn't really seem to take anything away from her, which is the case in a lot of them, I think. Like much like with the dad, for example, in the bargain, who went through all this hassle to negotiate a deal to keep a son, and then that went even better with the gardener being murdered than you could have hoped for. And I don't know, it's just like this really presumably positive outcome for the central character, who gets to have their, I don't know, crazy reaction to something relatively small and then gets to walk away from it, which I guess isn't true for all of them, because some of them also just die. But, some of them get to have an optimal outcome.
Yeah, I think same thing with the others is that, again, she gets her own form of restorative justice, where her partner cheated on her. She found out, so she also gets to she also cheats on him with the cook, and then she also gets to sort of violently punish the person that her husband cheated with, and then they reconcile, right? So for her, I guess you could say she was wronged. She did some sort of action to sort of pull herself right again, and then everything is fine. So yeah, I think in that respect, I think it's very similar to the other films, even though, unlike most of the short films, no one dies.
Yeah. I guess
Yeah,
sort of the
I
one
think
with the
I
sort of
think
worst outcome for the central character is probably the road rage one, because he also dies. And to be fair, I'm not even sure who the central character there is. Maybe both equally. I don't know. But they both die. And to add insult to injury, it also then the investigators then also say it looks like a crime of passion.
yeah,
Which is
I thought that
probably
made an
hugely
interesting.
upsetting to them. Sorry.
Yeah, I thought that made an interesting link with the final film because it ends with, the final film ends with the groom and bride having sex, and then it thinks that the investigator thinks these two characters who hated each other and caused each other to die were lovers.
Oh, yeah.
And the film seemed to be making a sly comment on this tenuous boundary between hatred and lust or something like that, like that these characters hated each other so much that they couldn't be pried apart and they just
Oh, that's
died
such a good point. Yeah,
embracing one another.
I did not pick up on that, but that's such a good point. Which I guess sort of
And
kind of links back to the theme in Secretos sus Ojos of passion, right? Because
mm,
love is a kind of passion, but so is hatred, right? And in a way, you can say that these two men in the road rage one were definitely passionate for each other because they both became so obsessed with this thing. Like at one point,
yeah,
the
and
first dude could have just driven away, right? But he didn't. At that point, he was sort of so obsessed with this event that he had to drive back, which ended up in both of them dying.
in The Secret in Their Eyes, Morales's love for his wife is directly proportionate to the hatred he feels for his wife's murderer.
Yeah,
And
who
rather
then
than being
becomes sort
able
of the
to,
core of his life, right? In a way.
and
Yeah.
rather than spending the rest of his life with his wife, he spends the rest of his life essentially married in silence to her killer.
Yeah.
I think Tanya, you brought up a word there that I think better sort of reflects, because I think the term that they use in Secret in Their Eyes is passion, but I think a better term that also reflects what was happening in the road rage part of the film is obsession. Like rather than passion, is obsession, right? Ultimately, the road rage people ended up killing each other because they were just entirely obsessed with each other, and I think that sort of links in with the theme of sort of this hatred and lust, right? Where at the end it doesn't make much sense why the people who cheated on each other, the wedding part of the film, got together, but then you can sort of explain that as some sort of lust and obsession with each other, this need to sort of punish them but also reconcile, and that I think obsession is a better term that sort of reflects it than passion itself.
Yeah, like all these films, like the two long films and all the short stories in this one, I think just really have this common theme of being so consumed with one thing that becomes everything to you. And in Secret in Their Eyes, I also like touch on that by saying, how can you live a life full of nothing? Because for Morales, like the only thing becomes getting what he perceives to be justice for his wife's killer in La Leonera. Like the only thing she cares about is being with her son, and doesn't care about anything else anymore. And then in each of these stories, everyone starts caring about this one thing that suddenly becomes everything to them, and that they want to sort of get resolved in a satisfying way, regardless of what it takes.
Did you guys have a favorite short film from the anthology?
Bombita, I definitely found the funniest.
Which one?
Well, no, actually, no. Either Bombita or The Bargain are probably my two favorite ones because I just think that those are the funniest ones. I don't know if I have a least favorite one. I just think they were all excellent in their own way.
I think The Bargain is the one that sort of stuck with me the most, but I'm a bit hesitant to call it my favorite because this is the one I sort of found the most upsetting in its outcome. Because with the other ones, I don't know. I mean, the two road rage dudes just kind of deserve each other, I guess, and sort of deserve their outcome, so that's fine. But like the gardener, and especially sort of the gardener's family, who's left over after that, obviously we never find anything out about. But sort of I can't help but sort of think about the implication for them and how life continues for them. So that one, I guess I found that one the most impactful because I find it to be sort of the most horrible one. Yeah, apart from that, I don't really know. I thought the first one was just quite, I don't know, funny, but also, I think it did a good job sort of setting the scene for what was to come. I think it's completely before the opening credits, even, isn't it?
Yeah,
That's probably the
the
shortest one.
short literally freezes on the plane about to collide with the two parents, and then the credits roll. which is a great opening. Supposedly, Bombita was something of a phenomenon in Argentina, and people would spray paint "I am Bombita" on the
Oh
sides
yeah,
of
I
buildings and
reckon.
things like that because they related so much to this character who just went ballistic because he kept getting his car towed.
Yeah.
I think my favorite is probably the last one, "Till Death Do Us Part." I
Mhm.
think that performance from Erica Riva when she realizes that her partner has cheated on her is just Shakespearean in its fury.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
that's true.
Cheating on him, telling him I'm going to take all your money, and then just storming into the wedding and throwing the woman into the glass and pouring a glass of champagne for herself. She is just so frenzied in her rage and
Just so
her
unhinged, isn't it?
yeah, so unhinged. That's the word. I thought it was just amazing.
I have to say,
But
all
yeah,
the
no,
acting in all of them, I thought was just really good. So
yeah. I loved all the films. There wasn't a weak one for me.
Oh,
I
really?
also want to make my usual translator comment on this and say that with the subtitles we watched, I definitely felt like they sort of. I guess it's always hard to translate swear words and stuff, but I do feel like they sort of toned that down quite a bit, and especially in the Rage one, but some of the others as well. I thought they sort of opted for sort of less offensive or less sort of harsh insults than how I understand the Argentinian ones that they actually used in Spanish.
Interesting. Yeah.